Of an action movie, it would be this GoPro helmet cam footage of two King airplanes colliding mid-flight. The fiery scene, which unfolded 12,000 feet in the air above, sent one small plane careening into the ground, while another limped safely back to the runway. Fortunately, the 11 passengers aboard the planes were there with the intentions of going skydiving, meaning that everyone involved in the wreck had come aboard with their very own parachute. For them, the collision resulted in nothing more than minor injuries to two of them. The crash happened on a bright Saturday evening over Superior, Wisconsin, near the Minnesota state line. The two single-engine planes were maneuvering into a position called a tracking dive, which is when one plane is closely following the other just before the skydivers prepare their jump. However, as seen captured on the cameras, one plane ended up flying underneath the other. In the confusion, the pilots unknowingly quickly closed the gap between the two planes and slammed into each other, causing catastrophic damage to the plane's propellers, wings, and bodies. In addition, upon impact, Daniel Chandler, one of the skydivers, was pinned between the planes and then thrown into the open skies, after which the rest of the divers followed suit. One by one, they poured out of the wreckage into the safety of the sky. The falling cameraman turns to look back at the debris just as the lower plane's engine erupts into a fiery sight. At that point, the pilot realized it was a lost cause and is seen diving out of the wreckage using his emergency chute. Despite that, the other pilot chose to remain inside the cockpit of his plane. Luckily for him, the plane he was piloting hadn't caught fire and it was able to limp to a safe landing. As for the rest, they parachuted down safely into an open field. Much to their relief, the abandoned plane spiraled down into an empty field. As crazy dangerous as it seems on the GoPro footage, of all the mid-air collisions to have, this one probably happened in the most ideal of circumstances. Although the farmer whose field was ruined by a crashing plane might disagree. They say justice is best served cold, but sometimes it chooses to be served as two red-hot bullets. On Saturday, October 12, 2013 in Sao Paulo, a helmet-mounted GoPro captured a Brazilian robber getting shot after trying to steal a motorcycle. The footage went viral after it was published on YouTube and shared on social media sites. The cameraman riding on a motorcycle is seen approaching an intersection when another motorcyclist and his passenger pull in front of him. The passenger on the other motorcycle points a pistol directly at the cameraman, who quickly steps off the bike. The biker hands over his keys to the gunman, who then attempts to flee with the newly acquired motorcycle. However, before he is able to drive off, a man exits a car sitting next to them, pulls a gun, and shouts at the thief. The heroic stranger turns out to be an off-duty police officer. The officer demanded for the thief to step away from the stolen bike. Instead, he retaliates by pointing his firearm at the officer. The officer responds by unloading 2 shots into him. The bullets hit the robber in the abdomen and leg, causing him to drop to the ground. After the video ends, an ambulance rushes to the thief to rush the young man away. The 18-year-old survived wounds but was slapped with a long prison sentence. A Russian paraglider experienced the fright of a lifetime when his parachute accidentally nabbed an additional passenger while he was soaring miles above the Indian Himalayas. The man, an experienced paraglider nicknamed Paravolka by the paragliding community, was enjoying his glide down back to Earth when he had the misfortune of colliding with an adult griffin vulture. The vulture became entangled in the ropes and compromised the effectiveness of the parachute. Before he knew it, Paravolka was descending toward the ground at an alarming rate. Luckily, he managed to open the emergency parachute, which greatly decelerated his fall and helped him regain control of the deadly situation, which saved his life. Still, the Russian man was destined for a crash landing into the trees. Miraculously, he only received minor injuries, and once safely on the ground, he was able to radio his friends for help. As for the large bird, it was still tangled in the ropes, but nonetheless, it was still alive. Paravolka was kind and daring enough to free the spooked bird. Not an easy task either. The claws had become tightly tangled in the canopy. Finally, when the bird was freed, it flew away, presumably to harass more parachuters. The dangerous flight, or fall if you will, was caught using a GoPro attached to the glider's helmet. Typically, when you have this type of nightmare, you wake up just before you hit the ground. But online, Ager became a global internet sensation. After his astonishing escape, he said he is thankful he is still in one piece. These two daredevils are out to prove anything, it's that they're not afraid of heights, which the duo demonstrate by climbing the second largest building in the world, the Shanghai Tower. This is one video you'll be holding your breath for the entirety of. The video was shot during the construction of the building and starts on street level with a masked man speaking Russian to the cameraman. The two then travel to the base of the tower, scale a wall, and illegally gain access to the site. From there, they stealthily work their way up to the barren interior, being careful not to be noticed by the night guards. First, they start their ascent the easy way by taking the stairs all the way to the top floors, which other than breaking a few laws doesn't seem so extreme. So the daring duo step it up a notch by nonchalantly dangling themselves over the ledge of the 650-meter tall building, so high up that even when the cameraman attempts to look at the ground, his view is obstructed by an actual cloud. After deciding that wasn't daring enough, they proceed to climb a construction crane. But they don't just climb the crane, they climb the raised arm as well, which just happens to hang over the building side. The further they climb, the more apparent it becomes how dangerous it is, as they scale vertical scaffolding and horizontal ladders. One slip up and either of these men could easily fall to their death. The video ends once they reach the top of the crane, so we can only assume they made it back down safely. Otherwise, who would have uploaded the video? One good deed that didn't go unpunished. A moose tracker releases a young moose cow into the wild, only to have it come right back at him swinging. Moose, before it is able to charge again, the man grabs a nearby fallen tree and chucks it at the moose's head. The moose finally gets the punchline, shakes its head, and runs off, allowing the video to end on a happy note. Matthias Terrell and Stephen Loud are both experienced skiers used to tackling the most rigorous mountaintops. But two of them both agreed that they just weren't getting the same adrenaline rush they did from their beloved sport. They decided the missing element was impending doom. To complete this, the duo set out to find freshly snowed mountaintops and actively attempt to start avalanches with the intention of out-skiing it. At the start of the video, nothing seems out of the ordinary. The two stand at the top of the mountain inspecting the landscape. Then Girau starts using his skis to push snow down the hill. Little by little, the snow builds, and Girau hops down the hill to outrace it. A minute into the video, we get another big reveal. They were skiing directly toward a cliff. All planned, of course. The skier flies off the huge drop, deploying their parachutes and gliding safely away from the now massive avalanche. The avalanche actually beat Jalal to the edge, meaning he was mere seconds away from being buried under the crushing weight of the snow and whisked off the ledge. The adrenaline junkies landed safely away and excitedly celebrated their successful brush with death. Felix Baumgartner became a household name in October of 2012 for becoming the first person to break the speed of sound and reach an estimated speed of 833.9 miles per hour without the assistance of a vehicular power. The entire event was sponsored by Red Bull, who broadcasted live using GoPro cameras. He accomplished this feat by riding a specialized helium-filled balloon up 128,100 feet, the outskirts of Earth's atmosphere, where he then jumped back down. The jump also celebrates the 65th anniversary of when Chuck Yeager first broke the sound barrier flying in an experimental rocket-powered airplane. Felix's entire trip back to Earth lasted 9 minutes and 9 seconds, with 4 minutes and 22 seconds of that time spent in freefall. Countless millions of people around the world watched live through the GoPros broadcasted to television and the internet. At one point during his freefall, Baumgartner appeared to spin rapidly out of control, but having trained for this moment for the last 5 years, he wasn't exactly about to let that moment ruin him. At first he thought he'd let himself spin a few times and that it would fix itself, but then he started to speed up. At times the speeds were so brutal Baumgartner thought he might lose consciousness. He quickly regained control and moments later opened his parachute, as members of the ground crew cheered and viewers around the world heaved a sigh of relief. Baumgartner said he was so focused trying to stabilize himself that he completely missed the boom of him breaking the sound barrier. He'd have to wait until he landed to find out if he really did it or not. But once the parachute was deployed, the ride down would prove to be relatively uneventful. Baumgartner was able to land safely in the designated area where his team ecstatically greeted him. Later, Baumgartner was informed he had successfully broken the sound barrier, forever cementing his place in history. If there's anything to be learned from these videos, it's that winter is not quite the wonderland we thought it was. The 5-minute video features John Freeman, an experienced mountain guide and rope access supervisor living in Canmore, Alberta, Canada, who survived one of the craziest ice climbing falls ever caught on camera. When about halfway up a pillar of ice, Freeman swings his climbing axe 5 times into the ice, before the entire face splits off the mountainside. The split occurs right where the axe lands on the 5th strike. It instantly sends both Freeman and the 100 pounds of frozen water hurtling 60 feet down to the hard snow. The shattered ice carries such a momentum that it drags him for 30 feet down the mountain slope. Freeman miraculously survived the near-death experience with nothing more than a sore bottom. While he sits stunned from the aftermath, he turns to look for his friends, which gives us a clear view of the carnage he left behind. Chunks of ice the size of his torso lie scattered around him, some even as little as 3 feet away, but not one had hit him on the way down. This kind of experience would be enough to convince most men to never climb again, but Freeman is not like most men. He told press after the incident he skied out, went home, and climbed the next day. Network's dashboard-mounted GoPro captures one of the worst-case scenarios to encounter on the road. During a rush hour in Binghamton, New York on Route 17, a fast-approaching transport truck loses control and crashes into 10 cars. The accident occurred on a section of the highway dubbed Kamikaze Curve due to its limiting visual of the road ahead caused by the constant construction and traffic. The car with the dash camera was the first of 10 to be involved in the pileup and slammed into the back of the car, knocking it into the side railing. From what is seen on the footage, the second car gets pinned between the transport and an SUV, crushing it completely. When the transport truck passes, we get an unobstructed view of the destruction. A car of fire, terrified people, and wrecked rides scattered about. A lull in the video happens as the survivors and bystanders collect their thoughts before they realize people are still inside the burning car. Quickly, the group jumps to action, puts out the fire, and frees the passengers. Amazingly, there were no deaths or permanent injuries.